Right. Well, welcome back, Jarrett.
Hey, Jonathan, glad to be here again.
Yeah, so I'm really excited. Today we're going to be talking about the kind of infrastructure leadership session that just happened at reInvent 2020. So for those of you who are joining us for the first time, if you haven't seen our first two conversations we posted, you can check those out at missioncloud.com/blog. We'll have a bunch more content coming, but the purpose of these is really less to be a recap, right? If you want to read a recap, there's going to be 1,000 blog posts out there all over the internet about what was discussed. What we really want to do is kind of react a little bit, right? I kind of like to call it the unboxing of these sessions, right? It's a little bit more interactive and fun. What are the implications of all these things? I think the cool thing about this particular session is, it really shows the pattern that AWS has, which is they start everything with their culture, philosophy, and vision. This is who we are, right? And what does that mean for you? And that they did that here, right? They started off with some really great quotes that you'll hear repeatedly from AWS. There is no compression algorithm for experience, right? Everything fails, which is something that Werner Vogels has said. Undifferentiated heavy lifting, right? It's really interesting. And they talked about all the stuff that, AWS does for you so that you can focus on innovating, right? So they talk about, why are you managing a global, data center presence, power, cooling, global supply chain, right? AWS just does all this better than you're going to be able to. So, bring it on, right? Let us do the undifferentiated heavy lifting. And it really does drive in nicely to kind of the next topic where they talked with the NFL CIO, who was really in an incredible conversation. She really built on what they have been doing in this new world. And I think the cool thing there is the point that she drove home to me was that the world is forever changed, right? Which we hear about this all the time, but I think it's cool to see like in action what that looks like. And she said that they, obviously the NFL draft was their example. And they typically do that as a live event. They have ESPN coverage, they have all this. But because people are at home, people are wanting, more, and they're in front of their computers, they wanted a more digital experience, a more virtual experience. They didn't plan for that. And they were able to make it work. And they said, I wrote down the number, 55 million people streamed the NFL draft during that week. 15 million on the first day alone, which is,
That is amazing.
It's incredible. And it was all powered by AWS. And the money quote from me was, AWS cloud infrastructure was our resilient backbone.
I've seen that with clients in a number of different ways. You talk about the impact, it's the way it impacts your clients, but also the way it impacts your own personnel. You see cases where folks had big corporate offices, they had private lines into their data centers, but they weren't prepared for the amount of bandwidth they needed over the commodity internet for all of a sudden their whole workforce to go mobile in addition to the regular client traffic in there. And so having that cloud infrastructure helped to alleviate some of that responsibility for many folks as well.
Yeah, and it's putting the strain on everybody, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
movie theaters are going to be fundamentally changed. Corporate real estate is fundamentally changed. Sports leagues, which we've talked about, we have a lot of sports customers, actually, professional sports customers, and they have very specific pivots that they've had to make. Live events. The other one that always strikes me is, can you imagine what it must have been like for DoorDash and Grubhub and Postmates to go through this, this year? Like the incredible amount of scale that they had to achieve very, very quickly is terrifying. So, nothing will ever be the same. You have to be ready for this kind of thing to happen again.
I mean, you imagine how explosive it is on their front. Those aren't even, technology roles necessarily, not all of the roles where they've seen explosion, just even their workforce out there delivering meals or what have you. But that same thing is impacted on the technology side too, right? I mean, if all of a sudden you've had a big transformational shift in how you're running your infrastructure, how you're running your operations, you potentially have a huge skill gap there you have to go fill very quickly.
Absolutely. And we weren't left out of this, right? Like Mission had to have a huge pivot this year. Like I can tell you right now, what I do on a daily basis now is completely different than what I did on a daily basis at the beginning of this year. So, early in 2020, we saw, this kind of onslaught coming and said, what can we do? We have customers, they need to make it through this. The world is going to be different. What are the most important things we can do for them? And so we launched this huge set of initiatives, all designed around cost optimization, helping businesses make it through this next phase, right? We saved customers, millions, which is pretty cool. And so discount programs, cost optimization, like really driving that forward. But we also saw a lot of, kind of requests to do, accelerated transformation initiatives, right? Because there's only so much you can do, with pure cost optimization, right?
Absolutely. I mean, both of those, right? Like cost optimization is always on people's mind as well as transformation. But what you effectively had is people had these 2 or 3 year long roadmaps of how they wanted to handle, in a
Yep.
very controlled, strategic approach, their cloud transformation, and it got pulled into like 6 months. And we
Yep.
still see it. And so I think, we've seen transformation pipelines just explode. But we're really excited about it. We're prepared for that. And that's the right thing. I mean, we'll be able to help people get to the cloud sooner or expand their kind of cloud practice more
Yeah.
quickly, and they will reap the benefits of that. I think pulling that forward will definitely be a greater return on investment than having that, spanned out over 3 years.
Yeah. Agreed. And I think the other thing that this all has really surfaced is, frankly, there's a lot more connectedness to a lot of these different initiatives than I think I even personally realized, right? So, we've been doing managed services for, since our kind of founding, right? But we've often done them in sort of a discrete manner. And what we've discovered is customers really like, there's a lot of interconnectedness here. So we launched Mission Cloud One, a month and a half ago now, or 2 months ago.
All right.
And it's really designed to solve that challenge, right? It's a holistic approach. You can't just do cost optimization over here and no, transformation and no monitoring, no observability or visibility into your environment. You've got to take the whole shebang and look at it all at once. And that's been huge as well. So cost optimization, governance, 24/7 support, infrastructure management, and talk about undifferentiated heavy lifting that we're taking away. It's sort of like exactly the same thing. If AWS's message was, the world is different now. If you want to thrive in this environment, you need to take advantage of the resilient backbone that is AWS, the undifferentiated heavy lifting that they can do for you. And I think it's really great because they're telling that exact same message that we tell our customers, like, let us do more for you, right? You focus on innovating, doing amazing things with your app. We'll advise you on how to drive that change and guide you down the path, but let us handle your management of your environment. Because like your team knows your app better than we do, but we
Yeah.
know AWS better than anybody.
Some of this messaging has been around for a long time, but I think people are really starting to embrace it, right?
Yeah.
Running a data center, if that's not your core business focus, it's not a differentiator for your business anymore. Maybe back in the 90s, you could put on your website or whatever, your old brochure site, like how your uptime was, but that's just expected now. It's not a differentiator
Yeah.
anymore. So that's something you need to commoditize and not use your finite special resources and your focus as a strategic leadership team even to drive. And so that's where that undifferentiated heavy lifting really comes in and makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Focus.
Later on in this session, there was an interview with the Snap SVP, and he was talking about the same thing. And he was like, I love how I don't have to allocate any engineering time to building out my infrastructure.
Right.
And that's incredible. And it also brings back, again, the interconnectedness of all of these things. So they talked about scale out computing. And this is like, this is a great opportunity to geek out on like process architecture and all this
Got in the
stuff.
weeds on this one. Yeah.
Yeah. But I love that because to me, I've been in computing for a long time, and I've also been writing code for a long time. And so I know that it's funny. We saw this sort of multi-core future arriving as, kind of our ability to just drive scale and performance with bigger, better, faster cores was kind of we knew this was going to die at some point. But the funny thing is, programmers just, it's hard. It's hard to do. You know what I mean? So it's like, I can't take advantage of all these cores. And so, it's this horrible choice that like the Intels of the world and even AMDs of the world had to make, where it's like, I'm going to build a processor that has both extremely fast individual cores and is compromised to be able to have multiple cores and handle, things like SMT they talked about. But it's just like this big bucket of compromise.
I was just saying, compromise was the key word there for sure.
Yeah.
His trade-offs and trying to do it all.
Yep. And AWS is leaning into it. And if I'm Intel and I'm AMD right now, I'm not super pleased about the trends in the world that we're seeing, right? With Apple kind of, forging their own path on the desktop and in phones. And now, NVIDIA just bought ARM, which is huge, right? And,
Interesting stuff.
AWS putting out Graviton 2, powerful individual cores, packed on as many as possible onto the die, focusing on scale out microservices workloads that are perfect for the cloud.
Mhm.
And it's pretty interesting.
It was really interesting seeing some of the benchmarking graphs too. It doesn't seem like that long ago. It used to be so exciting between every CPU release and seeing big jumps. But at some point, it just started to feel kind of incremental, very linear,
Yep,
not super exciting. And what they showed today was definitely, I think, in his own words, was a non-linear improvement, a massive performance improvement
for
available.
sure.
And I think that's exciting to see again.
Yep. And at lower power and at lower cost, because they're not having to pay the giant Intel tax, right? And so this is a real shot across the bow. It's that interconnectedness, right? If I can get same as or better performance at a fraction of the cost, but it requires me to do, a small amount of transformation internally, a recompile here, that's totally worth it.
Yeah.
But it's all interconnected.
A lot of cost optimization themes. And we saw it earlier this week, or was it last week when you're talking about the new general purpose elastic block storage and things like that? We're starting to separate the way that you can choose IOPS versus capacity. And now we're seeing more performance gains on the CPUs. They showed the cost benefits of this versus the M5. So, I mean, I think we said it before already, but there should be a lot of cost optimization exercises coming off the back end of this, all these launches and announcements.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun 2021 for us, I think.
Good for everybody. Everybody wins.
Yeah, for sure. I guess, and the thing that to me also was really interesting is, at the end of the day, they opened with culture and values, and they ended with culture and values, but in a different way, right? So they opened talking about undifferentiated heavy lifting, kind of everything breaks or everything fails, no compression algorithm for experience, and what that means to us.
Control the blast radius.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end, they also said, well, our core values are also about efficiency and about, doing good in the world and about, environmental and social responsibility,
Right.
which I thought was really valuable, right? And they didn't spend a small amount of time on this. They spent the last 20 minutes on this, which is pretty impressive.
It was, and I think it's really good. I mean, this should be top of mind for everybody. I think it is top of mind for most folks. And seeing that, it helps you kind of find your own as a company, as mission. You see the connectedness and the cultures and what's important to us and core values. And we reflect on our own initiatives and what we do to also be environmentally and socially responsible. And so it just really drives kind of it makes me feel really blessed to be in this ecosystem and understand the alignment that we're all solving for some bigger picture things, trying to make our own little dent in the universe.
Yeah, for sure. And 2020 has been sort of a crucible in that way, right? Social justice issues and kind of we've been at the forefront there, which I think has been really great. And I'm proud of that. And, AWS is choosing to be on the forefront on the environmental side, which I think is really awesome. And I think it's good. To me, this is an encouragement and a signal from an industry giant, right? Every organization should be mission driven, right? We should all we're doing all these things, not just for, creating a viable business, but also because we want to make a dent, right, on the world. And I love that they close with that, because it really makes you feel like, okay, at the end of the day, while we're geeking out over compute and infrastructure and all sorts of fun and exciting stuff, the bottom line is we do have an opportunity to do cool things and amazing things with technology that can actually make a positive impact. So we're going to use that voice, not be afraid of it.
Yeah. I like you said, mission driven. Was that intentional?
No, I'll take it, I guess.
There you go.
I get that's part of why we picked this name. So
there you go. Let's achieve yours.
So good stuff. Well, I think we kind of covered the highlights there, and what a really fun, interesting session. I really liked how there was a lot of conversations with very smart, intelligent people. The NFL, Snap, really, really cool. And I'm looking forward to doing this again, Jarrett. And
absolutely. This has been a blast. To those of y'all, make sure you check out some of our previous ones too, if you hadn't already, and we've got more to come.
Awesome. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.